guys, welcome back to the show. This is the Ancient Health Podcast. I'm Courtney, and I can't wait to introduce our guest today. She has so many credentials, I probably couldn't list them all, but you may know her. She's a celebrity chef. She's a longevity wellness expert. She has her own podcast. She speaks. She's got products. So we're going to dive into all of it. But Serena Poon is who we have today, a certified nutritionist. And I absolutely love the work that she does. She's joining us from Turkey, which I just found out is 10 hours ahead of us in time. So she is all over the world, but she has such a culinary level of expertise. So for those of you that, maybe shy away from the kitchen, we'll talk about some really great tools that you can use and even just expanding. I need to expand so bad my meals. It's just like we're down to bare bones right now, but I'm just thrilled to have you on, Serena. Thank you so much for joining us on today's show. I know this is going to be such a great conversation.
Thanks so much, Courtney. It's been fun just chatting with you for a few minutes before we got started. So I'm really excited. Thanks so much for having me on, and I'm ready to dive in. First of all, I want to know why you're bare bones. There's so much out there in terms of what we can eat.
Listen, I'm in what we call a rut. I'm very much in a cooking rut. So this is actually, I want to get your story too about how you became like a celebrity chef, what drew you into food, what was so appealing about it, and what you love the most about that process, because maybe it will inspire me a little bit. I just feel like, when you just make the same thing, you kind of get in a rhythm, and then you're like, I think I forgot how to cook food. I only know how to make 4 things now. I'm like, I used to just, get creative. Maybe it's my creative brain that's a little bit tired, but maybe just bring us up to speed. If those of you that are listening you're not familiar with Serena, first of all, her Instagram is beautiful because she has all these like colorful posts and foods and it will inspire you. But tell us about your story and how you got to where you are today, because you're doing a lot of things, but I know there's probably a lot of just your personal passion that's tied into that story.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for giving me an opportunity to share while I'm here. So my story, I actually, I went to school. I'm Chinese American. So of course I was supposed to be either a doctor or, a dentist or a CPA or a lawyer. And, when I first started my journey, it was actually coming off of going to Berkeley and studying political science. So I actually went to Berkeley studying political science, but studying nutrition just because I love to eat. I mean, that was literally how, my family, we loved to eat. The kitchen was always sort of the center of the household. And when I was in my senior year at Berkeley, my daddy was diagnosed with cancer, actually. So he had stage 4 cancer. He was super young, in his 40s, and it was a blood disease. So it was one of those things where, he went and got checked up every 6 months, but between 2 6-month checkups, he was told he was fine, and then went back and was told he was stage 4. So that was sort of my first jolt basically into a different level of awareness about our health. And so we kind of went through that journey with my daddy for about a year and 3 months or so. And then he transitioned. And during that time, it was very tough for him, of course, and also the family. And he did allopathic traditional medicine. So he did chemo and radiation, but he also did Chinese medicine. He drank the teas and the herbs. And it was really, that was the beginning where I really started to shift. I was looking at food and plants and herbs and different things to just give him some sort of comfort. What were we not doing that the doctors hadn't told us about that could at least give him some comfort, maybe bring more nutrition than what was very standard? Because at the time, this is well over 20 years ago, it was just, give him some bread and some rice and some applesauce. Have him eat an egg. And that isn't enjoyment, on top of the fact that it's not all nutritionally dense enough. So I started looking then, and then 2 months after our daddy passed, our mom, and he was only 48, our mom was diagnosed with a rare form of ovarian cancer at 45. So this was I mean, we hadn't even had a chance to grieve. And here we are, like, here was our mom, our other parent, and we were fighting to save her life because her cancer was very rare. And she went through the same thing. She had to have a full hysterectomy at 45, and she went through chemo and radiation. And she's still with us, so she got through that. And I think it's my daddy and our angels sort of helping her and blessing her along the way, because her case was very rare. So there's only case studies before her. So it was somewhat experimental what we did. And then after that, I just realized that there's so much that we didn't, so much, at least through food and nutrition, that we didn't know. And it wasn't like we didn't have doctors who were very empathetic and caring and wanting to do the best for the family. There just wasn't that type of education or resources. So I finished at Berkeley and then decided I would go to culinary school. And so I went and studied Le Cordon Bleu to study food as medicine from a very beautiful place. Because they're teaching you in a most refined way. And even though French cuisine is not, I wouldn't say it's the healthiest, I went there to learn the techniques. And I continued to study nutrition, and, it was Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, just all different types of nutrition. And, my at the time, like, my goal was, okay, all I care about is the health and happiness of the people that I love, and it seemed like a very noble goal, especially since we had other family members that were sick. But we sometimes leave ourselves out of that list of people that we love, and who we're taking care of. So after a few years, I had a lot of inflammation in my body, mostly stress and not taking care of myself, thinking that if I sacrificed my own sleep or wellness or what I needed, that somehow my mom would be better, other people in my family, my uncle and my aunt would be better. So I ended up needing to get a surgery. I had a surgery to remove some damaged tissue. And from that surgery, I picked up MRSA, which is MRSA. It's a deadly staph infection. Got it straight from the OR. And then I was on my own health journey for the next 8 years, where I needed to have 8 surgeries to try and get rid of this. It was in my chest. They ended up finding it in my milk ducts, but it took the 7th surgery before they found that. And in between, after my 4th surgery, I had a hematoma. I don't know if you maybe I should explain. So a hematoma, it's like an internal bleeding, and that happened because I had had so many surgeries and tissue removed that they had to stitch and graft in donor tissue into my chest. And one of the stitches tore part of my pec muscle. So I had like internal bleeding. And then that became something that was, I nearly died just from so much blood loss. And it was on a weekend. And that's a longer story. And I can share more later on, or maybe at another time. But what happened was that it just really, being in the experience of a caretaker and witnessing what someone is going through is one perspective. And then being in the witness of yourself, being in the position where you are the patient, of course, gives you another perspective. So I was lucky enough. I was really lucky. Again, I think angels. I had clients that happened to know the medical director at Cedars, which is a big hospital in Los Angeles. And I had been bleeding for a while because my surgeon at the time wasn't responding to the emergency calls and the pages. So they basically came and picked me up. And this doctor from Cedars happened to have a trauma unit 10 blocks from where I lived in Santa Monica. Like, what are the chances of that? And he saved my life. He called in his OR team and they saved my life. And then I was on this journey of recovering because I'd lost so much blood. I couldn't even use the upper left side of my body. And at this point, I'm a chef. Helping and working with clients and through nutrition by way of food and supplements. And I couldn't really work because I couldn't move my left arm. And it was interesting because at that time, I completely knew what to do with food. And not all supplements, but my education was already, it had already been ongoing. I knew what to do with fitness. So I was super fit, super healthy. And yet these things were happening. And I thought, okay, there's a part of my life that I haven't, committed as much of my time and energy into. And that was my spiritual growth. And so during that same time, as I was recovering, not really knowing exactly what to do, I started talking to, there's a master teacher that I was introduced to by a dear girlfriend. And she lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And she'd been working with her family for a long time. And I talked to her occasionally, but to be honest, it was like a 911 call to a therapist, right? So I'd be in a bad place and then I would call her, as opposed to being very consistent and just talking to her on a regular basis. So I committed to that as part of my sort of spiritual growth and development. And during my healing journey, I spoke to her every 3 weeks or so. And she would say these things. So Courtney, I would just call her and she'd talk to me for about 90 seconds, and then she'd get off the phone and then she'd call me back after about anywhere between an hour and 90 minutes. And then she would go through what she called releases, through my body. And during these releases, she would explain, okay, there's releases in this part of your body, in this part, and these organs, and in this area. And I thought, okay, this is so interesting and I don't really understand what she's doing. But is there any way that I could help? Is there any way I could help myself while she's helping me? And that's where Culinary Alchemy, which is this method I have of combining food with our physical body, with our energy centers, and also, of course, with supplements and different lifestyle modalities, that's how it birthed. Because I thought, okay, these areas that she's working on, they're aligned to energy centers. These energy centers are aligned with our physical organ systems. So how can I help support those areas of my body that she's saying has imbalances or need support? And so that's how it happened. And so I kind of developed that method and then ended up really diving into a consulting aspect of my business, because I could still do that. I had all the knowledge. And I had such an expertise in pre and post op. The doctors, I'd lost so much blood. I was so anemic. I was probably like at a 7, with my hemoglobin. And they thought, there's no way you can bring this up in less than 2 months. And I thought, okay, there's no way I could live with like this, because if I went into more detail, I was in a really bad place. I was gray when I came out. And I did it in 5.5 weeks in order to get back into the OR so they could fully repair me. But that came from treating myself like a client and, doing all the things necessary to really optimize the body and help the body heal itself to the point where they could go back in and do the rest of it surgically. So, that pretty much brings me to now. Just along the way, I just looked at so many different types of healing modalities. What we call biohacking now, I was doing before biohacking was a word, whether it was red light or oxygen therapy or all of that I was doing well over a decade ago. So just looking at different modalities to help the body. I really believe that we are such a healing vessel. And sometimes we just need to give our body some help, some support, little things along the way.
Yeah, your story is truly remarkable. And the fact that we're sitting here and having the conversation based on everything that you just said truly is, it's miracles. Like it's miracle on miracle on miracle. And I just see such supernatural provision over your life. Like there have been doors and opportunities because there's purpose that you've been meaning to fulfill. And so I think it's a testimony just what you have overcome given the obstacles. Like you said, like certain things just shouldn't have been there, like certain doctors and, all of these things that just were in place, like they were in position at the right time. And then this awareness of, I need to be able to take care of myself. There are a lot of people that they really do struggle because they are so strung out taking care of everybody else that it comes at the expense of their own health. Yeah. And I think that a lot of times we wait until things are so bad that then we start putting attention towards ourselves. And ultimately, like, it can be very mentally defeating, because then we think, well, now we still have people, we still have responsibilities. We're letting people down.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, we have to be able to sustain habits that allow us to be the caregiver, be in people's lives, but not at the expense of our own physical destruction or our own emotional destruction. And we've got to be able to realize that without nourishing all parts of our bodies, there cannot be full healing. So I think that plants and foods have incredible healing power, but they are not the savior. That is the creation. That is the sustenance, part of the sustenance, but it is not the only piece that heals. And until we can really say, yeah, we have to put intentionality behind all areas of our health in order to live the life that we were meant to live. Like, that's the substance. That's really where the sweet spot is. But we really have, just like we have a fragmented medical community, we have fragmented the way that we address our health, and it's like,
absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when I talk holistic, it's really with a W, it's your whole system, your whole body. And, it's really interesting when we talk about how burnout is so common, right? Especially for us in the US, like burnout. And I think that when we talk about self-care or even something like self-love, there's this energy about it that's not easily accepted by everyone, that maybe it's even selfish to do that type of thing. And to take care of yourself. And I think that one of the most important parts, one of the most important driving forces, I think, behind what we need to do to take care of ourselves is sort of remembering what our purpose is. And, everyone has a different purpose. And I remember when I was sitting in my bedroom after I'd almost died and that doctor saved my life, and I was in a really bad way. I was so weak. I literally had to crawl to the bathroom. I mean, I had to like psych myself out. It would take me 10 minutes to get on the other side of my bedroom wall to go use the bathroom. And then I'd go back, and I was, so much inflammation in the body, was trying to heal. And by the way, I have to make sure that everyone knows that at that healing point, I had definitely had protein. I was eating as much as possible to rebuild my blood. Even though I am a preferred plant-based lifestyle, absolutely when necessary, when needed, that's important. And I remember during that time, you get into these sort of dark places, like what you just said, right? You get into these dark places, and it's so easy to kind of fall victim to that part of our minds that aren't nourishing us. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I'm a good person. Why is this happening? Why has this happened to my family? I'm a good person. I'm trying to do things, but that's sort of the mentality that kind of can keep us stuck, and it was just taking that moment and realizing that I'm doing all of this, for something greater. And remembering my dad, remembering, and we get into the spin of things. We get, even with our purposes, right? Like we get into like the flow of work and life and going for the next thing and the next achievement and the next level and expanding. And we sometimes lose sight of like what's in our heart and what's in our soul. That's really the driving force. And after going to culinary school and doing all of this, I was doing it because of what happened with my parents, but then losing sight, losing that connection with like where I was in my soul about it. And once I remembered my dad, and like, this is why I'm doing it. Like, this is why my purpose is not to sit here in what I feel like is this suffering, that there's something so much greater. And on the other side of every experience we have is, it's a learning, but it's also a teaching, I believe. So everything that I experience, I can teach, which is what we do now. And David and I travel all over the world giving talks. And when we do, whether it's talks or events and the content that we put on, online, or I guess my team does more of that. And he teaches at Harvard. It's really about how do we give everyone as many resources as possible to live their best life, to give them choice. Because I think, at the end of the day, we want choice. We want to be able to make the best decisions about how we live, how we stop living, how we die, just how we do everything. We want the best. We want to have choice. We want the best options. And that comes with resources through education. And then, of course, there are products and services that people create. But yeah, I really agree with you. And forgetting ourselves sometimes is a mistake that we make. And anytime you can circle back and just remember, that you can't serve others unless you serve yourself is an important reminder.
So good. I mean, identity is everything. And we could do a whole episode just on that alone. But honestly, I mean, I think a lot of the breakdown of what we see just even outside of health. I mean, we're talking breakdown of family, breakdown of the church, breakdown of communities, breakdown everywhere is because there's a lack of identity. When people don't know who they are and they allow culture to start labeling, they allow their disease to start labeling, they allow hurt individuals to start labeling, that will translate to your physical, because now you have adopted the mindset that I am broken, that I am a victim, that I don't deserve anything better. So guess what? Now your body will start operating from those places. And in order to get free from it, you have to be able to identify that I have now come into agreement with lies. And so those are the things, those are the strongholds that have to be broken. And I'm seeing this starting to come up. It's like a groundswell a little bit, because those that are beginning to see it are seeing the power that it has. It has power over your family. It has power over your physical body. So make no mistake, the things and the voices, if you do not go back and start looking at the things that you have allowed to label, that you have come into agreement with, you will never break free from it. I mean, it is like shackles to your soul. And just like you said, neglecting the soul has a direct impact on your physical health. So I'm not saying that if you have a symptom that you've got a black soul. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that we have to realize that our bodies are always taking commands from our brain, and our brain and our heart are connected to every input that we are exposed to. So these are just important. This is just so fundamentally important. And I believe that we have just somehow managed, even in the world of natural health, to learn how to medicate ourselves with things. Things are not the medicine. Things are the support and they are the tools. But it is the identity of knowing who you are and the value that is on your life that comes number one. And I love all these. I mean, listen, I'm a fan of the tools. I am a fan of the supplements and the herbs and the red light and all the things. I use them all.
I agree with everything that you're saying. We have tools, but at the end of the day, it's all internal. It's all internal. And what you're saying about the heart and the mind and the heart and the brain and that coherence and the connection to the body, that is everything. And that is so core. I mean, I just resonate with you so much, Courtney. That is so core to my practice and my teaching. So much of it has to do with the mind. So often if someone has, let's say they have choices that they're making that they don't want to make when it comes to, say, food, I'm going to tell you 9 times out of 10, that choice comes from an experience in their past. Whether you want to call it a trauma or a memory or what have you, it comes from an experience in the past that is logged into their mind, and there's an attachment, neurologically, there is an attachment from the mind to that decision. And so often, even though we have food and we have supplements and we have, as you said, all the different types of modalities and therapies, the core is really understanding the person before me. It's really understanding who is in front of me, who are they beyond the externals, who are they beyond the labels, as you said, who are they beyond the identifiers, because that's not their identity, right? And then that really helps us get to the heart of so often what is an imbalance or even a disease in someone. It can be a pain, it can be a disease, it can be an imbalance. And that comes from within, comes from what you're saying. So that is very core to my practice.
Okay. I love what you just said. And I just want to like unpack this a little bit more, because what I just heard was that you were talking about the decisions between, should I eat this, or should I buy this supplement, or should I, and really what a lot of people do, and I am 1000% guilty of doing this, is just, well, what is she doing? What are they doing? Like they look like they're healthy. They look like they're not suffering. I'll try that template because it looks like it's working. And so we lose this ability to have discernment. And what you just said there was that discernment, the discerning eye of, I want this over that, is connected to the habits and the past. And so if we don't know why we got connected to that decision before, we will keep repeating the same thing now. And so I think that now we live in a culture where we have so many options. I've never seen so many options. I mean, it's like, it's overwhelming. Like we started the show and I said I was kind of in a rut. And a lot of that is just because I've kind of cut off in a lot of ways. Like I'm not on social media much right now. I've really limited a lot of things because I've just realized in some ways I need to simplify, because I need to get back to understanding, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like what purpose is this serving? So when it comes to our nutrition and our food choices and lifestyle choices surrounding that, what advice would you give somebody that's like, I kind of don't even know why I'm doing that. I don't know why I'm taking that supplement. I don't know why I go to the gym at 6 a.m. Like, it's just like, that's what I've always done. Like, what tools would you recommend somebody, or even questions to maybe even ask themselves to help start unpacking? Because a lot of us want to experience something different, but we are completely attached to habits that produce the exact same thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, the very first question that I ask people, there's a couple questions that I ask people, but one of the first questions that I ask people is, what are your goals? And, typically it'll be like, oh, I want to lose weight. I want to have more energy. I want to, I sleep better. I want to not feel bloated. I mean, these are very sort of standard, and that's okay. I get that. But it's like, then we dive a little deeper. So you want to feel better. How is it that you feel right now? You want to have more energy. How is it, how do you feel when you wake up in the day? We go through the day minute to minute, end to end when I work with somebody. So when you start to get into, I want to have more energy. Let's do something simple like that. Like, I want to have more energy. Why do you want to have more energy? Do you want to have more energy because you want to do more? Is it because you feel old? You feel listless? You feel like you have no motivation? Is it because you have younger kids and you just are excited to spend more time with them? Those are the type of questions that you need to ask yourself, is the why. I mean, and that's essentially what you said, but it's not just stopping. I call it the 9 layers of why, and sometimes you go past 9, but you have to really understand why, and your reason for taking something might be because you want to look better. And that's fine. It doesn't have to be some profound reason, but it could be that. And then, but you go into why maybe there's an insecurity about X, Y, or Z. And that's really the reason why you want your skin to look better. At the end of the day, it's really about coming back to yourself and really understanding yourself better, like your own motivations. And it doesn't necessarily have to be I just want to be healthier. That might sound like the great answer and what the answer should be, but it might not be. It could be, I just want to have more strength. So that, for example, I was working out like a crazy person, several years ago. I was in the gym 6 days a week, doubles on some days. And I had a lot more muscle mass, and I was extremely, extremely strong. Did my physical body reflect the results of working out that way? Yes. But the reason why I was working out that way was because my sister and I took on we became caretakers for our grandmother. We took her on legally. We became her caretaker, and she was more wheelchair bound, and she was heavier. And so literally, in order for me to get her in and out of the wheelchair for the different doctor's appointments, or anytime I had to get her in and out of the wheelchair or in and out of the car, I had to be 10 times, well, not 10 times, I had to be at least 5 times stronger than I was. So my interest in what I was putting into my body at the time, and my diet and my supplements, just everything that I was doing was about getting stronger, and that was my motivation for that. I don't work out like that anymore. I definitely should work out more, but my body is more attuned to lighter, workouts like, say, Pilates, more resistance training and some weight training. But at the time I was lifting a lot of weights. So, I think so much of it just has to do with coming back to yourself, like needing to know yourself a little bit more. Because when you come back to yourself and really asking yourself very simple questions, like when you say, why am I doing this? It's not a straightforward answer. Like, I just want to be healthier. I just want to be fit. There's a reason behind that. You might want to look better because of your partner. You want to keep them. I mean, I don't know. For everyone, it's a little bit different. But I think that that's part of what you've mentioned about there being an oversaturation of everything in the health and wellness space, but beyond that even, right? Because of social media and all these different platforms, there's such an oversaturation and overwhelm of like, what's the best thing to do, in every aspect of life. That car is better because it's, I don't know, some electric car that can go 10 times faster, or like, this is the type of, haircut. This is the best gym equipment, whatever it is. There's so many different things, but understanding what your real purpose is for what makes you feel good, is really important. Like, what makes you feel good? And I think that when we were during COVID, people had a chance to really, realign with why they were working so hard, why they spent so many hours in the office or at work. And the reason was at home, the reasons that they were spending so many hours in the office, so much time at work, was to provide for their family, or to provide for their kids. And yet that was the least amount of time that they were spending, was at home. And then COVID really gave people an opportunity to like reassess and shift their perspective and realize, wow, this is amazing. I get to spend all this time with my kids or with my parents or with my family. And they either didn't know because they went right into, a lifestyle that only meant 5 or 6 hours at home with family, or they forgot about it. So I think that now that, it's been a few years since that time where we got to spend time at home, it's sort of human behavior, it's sort of like that rubber band thing, we've kind of, again, we need reminders, and sometimes we lose sight of like the real why of why we're doing something. So, that's a very long answer to your question that should have been shorter, I think.
No, that's great. I think it's all about perspective. I think everybody that's listening wants to get better, wants to have tools, wants to be able to have an open mind to understand in a different way. Because I mean, ultimately, if we are not mentally in a position, or even have our heart in a position for expansion and growth, then we will be stuck. And our bodies are meant to evolve and change, and they will. They're not meant to last forever. I mean, we just don't. Like, the sphere of longevity is great. I love that. I want my body to be thriving for as long as possible. But at the same time, like, I want to spiritually mature. I want to emotionally mature. Like, those are things that people just kind of skirt around, and I think that's why we're dealing with a lot of the mental health issues, which is a totally different basket we won't dive into. But, I just think that we've compartmentalized a lot of our health, and now we're trying to figure out how to put them all back together. And it's like, well, this piece doesn't fit. Well, yeah, because we haven't done anything with it for 25 years. Like,
it's so true.
It's just, so of course the physical body is in one stage of the race, and the emotional health is in another stage of the race. And now we're realizing that they need to be connected together in order for us to be able to really feel our best. And you've got adults now in their 40s and 50s that are realizing, I've left a huge piece out of my development. for decades. You know, and it's okay. Again, as soon as we have this level of awareness and really submit ourselves to, you know, we need to heal and grow in these areas. Like if I don't, then I cannot expect to be healed in the way that I want to. I can't expect to experience the joy and the fulfillment. I will feel like I'm constantly needing validation, that I need something to fill me up. I need those dopamine hits, whatever it is. You just constantly need more. You are never satisfied. And that's where I feel like with all of the cultural options, it's, you know, we can almost just medicate ourselves with, I want this and I want that. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I posted something on social media, I don't know, a week or two ago, and I'll add this to what you just said, because I think this actually really got me thinking. And the question was, if you didn't know what anybody else was doing, would you still be doing what you're doing? Or
That's a great
if you
question.
didn't know what anyone else was doing, what would you do? Because I think that a lot of our decision making is based on what we see other people doing. And we think, well, that's maybe the same expectation for my life, so I need to show up and do that. Or they are in a position of health. I'm going to do what they do. If you didn't know what they did, what would you be doing? And that again comes back to purpose and identity. But it's a question to ask yourself, because you even said it, the motivation. What's the motivation behind it? The motive of the heart. It will always spill out into the things that it's what births everything in your life. So if you're not happy with certain things in your life, figure out what's motivating you, because those are the things that may need to just die. Those are the things that need to be broken. And it's okay. Breaking is so great. I've been in a season of breaking for months and I love it. I'm like, because it's what creates space for growth. Like you can't hold on to everything in your life and just add more. Like that's not how. You've got to open your hands and let some things go, let some things die before you can set foot into new territory. So we went
you have to create space. You have to create space. You can't create space without releasing, you know?
Yeah.
I love something that you said about the dopamine. We are such a dopamine dependent society. You know, we really are just with social media essentially and the news, and has definitely created a bunch of dopamine addicts amongst our society. And I think that paying attention to, you know, we were talking about simplifying, how you're simplifying your protocols, you know, your foods, you're simplifying. And I would say that's a really great place to start for anyone who feels overwhelmed. You know, when we do talks and people will ask me, what are the 3 things that you recommend? You know, and we're there as longevity experts. So, you know, what are the 3 things that you would recommend for longevity? I say meditation, you know, and for some people that may be prayer, you know, but it's really about connecting to your spiritual self, meditation, hydration, and eating the rainbow, because you get the whole spectrum of the type of nutrients, phytonutrients, polyphenols, you know, vitamins and minerals that you need. And that sounds so trite almost, but that's really where everything begins. You know, when you look at all these different supplements and molecules, they're coming from, a lot of them are synthetics derived from plant molecules. You know, so much of what we need that we're taking in a supplemental form. And I'm obviously, you know, I obviously am a proponent of supplements. I have a supplement line. There are times that we do need to supplement, especially if the quality of our food isn't ideal and isn't as nutrient dense, but they come from food-based sources. So, you know, it's really about simplifying down to like very basic needs and making sure that we get that first. You know, and as you said, if you're not feeding your soul, if you're not feeding your heart, if there is no growth, you know, that's a fundamental basic need that you can't capsulize, you know, that you can't put into a workout program, that is necessary for our wholeness. And is necessary, you know, for, as we've already talked about, our emotional, psychological, mental wellness plays into our physical wellness as well. So I think it's really great that you're bringing attention to this in the way that you are. And for us to talk about it here, because it's something that I am also, you know, I use my platform to talk about it as well. I think it's so important, and it's really the thread. And sometimes because that thread isn't so visible, it's not as tangible, people forget about the importance of it. And it's no more important than the food we eat. And those are like sort of like the pillars in my practice.
That's so great. What is your favorite? You do have a supplement line, Serena Loves, which is I think you've got some. I was actually looking through, and I was like, oh yeah, these are all great supplements. But you have one, and you did a post on this recently, and this may seem like it's totally random for where, just this whole conversation. But I also think it's really important because we talk a lot about protein and amino acids on some of our shows, but you did a post recently on taurine, which I think is so interesting because taurine gets depleted by stress in a lot of ways that most nutrients do. And we live in a world where stress is just, it's everything is a stressor. Like we talk about that all the time. It's like, okay, well, just don't be stressed. Just don't get rid of the stress in your life, but I think that I have found a lot of benefit in using taurine specifically. And so I want to just highlight it because this may be helpful for somebody. We don't talk a lot about like very specific nutrients, or we'll talk super general, but since you just did something on this and have a supplement line that incorporates this, I would love to ask you about taurine specifically. Like what about that amino acid is so helpful for people? In what situations do you find it to be beneficial? And maybe even break down like where it comes from and kind of that, just so we have a general understanding.
Sure. So taurine is a sulfur-containing amino acid, and recently there was a study published. I think it was actually last summer, so maybe in June or July. There was a study that was published. It was a fairly significant study that was published in Science, showed that taurine supplementation can extend lifespan of various animals, and that's mice, worms, monkeys even. And the deficiency of it can actually be a driving factor towards aging. So what it can do is, and by the way, just for, the audience out there, they probably already know because they're an audience of this podcast. So they're quite savvy, I would think, in amino acids. These are necessary. There's essential amino acids that we need that we get from eating a variety of foods. And taurine is one that needs to be supplemented, at the levels that this paper had published, the study that was done. And it was quite high. We recommend about 3 grams. So it appears to play a fairly significant role in mitigating the aging process. So it can affect cellular senescence. So what cellular senescence means is there are cells in our body that are called senescent cells. And they're sometimes, kind of offhandedly labeled zombie cells because they basically take up our energy. They take up energy and they take up energy away from healthy cells, and they don't really do much for our body. So that's why we can do things like take senolytics. Senolytics help us remove the senescent cells from our body, help mitigate that. But taurine does the same. And it can also help with inflammation and mitochondrial dysfunction. These are all things that contribute to the aging process. It contributes to our level of energy. I think you said that you feel better taking it because it helps improve the level of energy in our body, especially if it helps remove like these waste product type of cells that are consuming energy without really adding anything to our body and taking the energy away from other cells. So, and of course, it can help with muscle. You work out, I'm sure most people, all of us should be working out every day. But, especially when it comes to working out, it can help with strength, and it can help with coordination, memory. And so it's done a lot in terms of animal studies. It's extended lifespan, I think, up to 20 some percent, maybe 22 or 23%. And that was in mice. But they're finding similar effects, in humans as well. So it's just one of those amino acids that's not common, I mean, we don't talk about it in a way where we're just taking taurine. It's usually in a blend of other amino acids. It's in blends of like protein drinks and not even protein necessarily, but like protein drinks. You can find it in supplementation form where there's a small percent of the taurine along with the other amino acids. But this one, because of the findings last summer and then other studies, they're realizing that this particular amino acid really has some profound effects when it comes to the aging process and our mitochondrial health. So it's been really great. We need more. I think that, we don't typically say, okay, take taurine, it does this, but I would say, and as a practitioner, I have it in my supplement line. And as a practitioner, I tell people, take it, start with 1 gram, see how you feel, and you can like move up to 2, 3, 4 grams, and see how you feel on it, depending on how active you are, how much you work out. Of course, your own mass, for someone who's small like you might not need, 3 or 4 grams of it. For someone who has more mass, who's a larger size, that can definitely be beneficial for them. So yeah, it's something that we decided to add into the supplement line after this study was published last summer. It just seemed like it made a lot of sense with sort of like our longevity SKUs, along with berberine and the other amino acids.
Yeah, I wanted to just highlight it because it's something I've just talked about with some other practitioner friends too, something that I've been supplementing with. And it doesn't really get, like you said, it kind of gets lumped in with all the other amino acids, which all of them are important, the essential, non-essential. But we normally don't highlight, but most people don't really know, like, well, what does one do versus another? And they all have their individual role, but taurine is one that has been a little bit more highlighted or put a little bit more on the platform and stage. It's gotten a little bit more attention. So I wanted to just give our listeners an understanding of what it is. I want to ask this really quick before we wrap up, but what are some of the benefits, or what have people noticed if they start incorporating taurine? Have you heard of or had any testimonials where you've seen people have improvement, whether it's in recovery or sleep or
Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry to cut you off. Yes.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
There's, people have definitely experienced, faster recovery. And this is just, feedback that we've had in terms of our supplements. And I'm sure there's a lot more data that you can find online. But it helps reduce inflammation. So in terms of recovering after working out, it's been very, very beneficial for people, because we do have, you want to inflame your muscles, of course, that helps you build them, but you also want to be able to recover from it. So that's been very effective for people. And it also helps with, I think I already mentioned, maintain mitochondrial function. So it's good for energy production, cellular health. It's got antioxidant properties. So it's very good for our brain, so brain health, and also cardiovascular health, because all of this goes hand in hand, especially when you're talking about muscle health. So these are, it sounds very basic, but I think if you, and again, I have to make the disclaimer that these are potential implications for humans, since, there hasn't been an actual clinical study on people yet, but they're finding that all of this is very promising. And there is a lot of feedback from consumers and people who are taking it at these higher dosages, that they're experiencing some of the similar benefits that they've seen in the animal studies, which is great, because this is like a single amino acid, which, it's sometimes better just to need to take one, or like one molecule. There are some of the amino acids can have counter effects, so some of the amino acids for women can cause melasma, and if you're taking taurine in a blend as opposed to single, you're going to get, and in order to take them in the amounts that are beneficial, you might get more of another amino acid or two that you don't really need more of. So taking it on its own is great. And you've been using it for a while.
Yeah, I started using it in the fall of last year. So I don't now, and I rotate, I cycle on and off a lot of supplements. So that's one that I've used, but I take it in the evening, like a few hours before bed, and I actually sleep better with
That's
it.
Great.
I find that it's really helped. I feel like with cortisol, just putting the brakes a little bit on the stress response system. So if you're somebody that has a hard time dialing down at the end of the day, or find that you get kind of more wound up, that's kind of how I'm a little bit more, have a little bit more of a tendency towards that.
And I
so
need to send you some Love My Calm.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So,
I would love that. Yeah.
Go through, and it's what you want. Just let me know and we'll send it to you. But Love My Calm is something that we use, that we recommend for that. If you're someone, because it's like it's a fermented form of GABA. So it's fantastic for any time during the day and also at night, because it helps people just sort of, it helps people relax and get grounded. That's the best way I can describe how that supplement helps you, because it doesn't make you tired. It just makes you, it just grounds you, grounds you so that you can get very clear. And then the other one that's very popular is Sweet Dreams, which is what people use at nighttime for sleep. But those are, when we're talking about calming effects and what can lead you into a good night's sleep, along with the taurine, as Courtney was saying, it is the Sweet Dreams is something that's really popular, and it just, you just get a very restful night of sleep.
Yeah, this is great. We'll link Serena's supplement line in here, Serena Loves, and you've got some great blends with L-theanine and other nutrients specifically that help the nervous system. Just kind of, like I said, putting the brakes a little bit on it. It's not going to like slingshot you into feeling like you're going to take a nap, but it's just it's just like you said, it's kind of grounding. And taurine, I believe, is a building block for GABA, so those are, so what we're doing is helping the body with that kind of brake system. And I think that a lot of people are just like driving the throttle down on stress all day long. And then we have a really hard time transitioning at night, which is why, I believe even highlighting taurine and some of these other compounds can be really helpful, because they are natural, but they also get depleted a lot of times by stress, by the presence of cortisol in the body. So if you are just so wound up and cortisol heavy, and then you are going to have a hard time producing hormone at night that's supposed to help you sleep. You don't just like in a snapshot just flip a switch and now you're sleeping. So I know many of us know this because we lay there in bed and just ruminate. Or just, we just stay up far too late. I know I do this, especially in the summer. I'm like, oh, it's still light out. We're all still awake. So
yeah, well, I'm definitely going to send you some Love My Calm, because it's perfect for calming the mind. Yeah.
So good.
And if it's summertime, you should still be out. Actually, where do you live? Are you?
Well,
or where are you
I'm in
based?
South Carolina. Yeah, I'm in the U.S. I'm in South Carolina. So, yes, we are entering the months where I just thought last week, I was like, wow, it's like 6 a.m. and the sun is coming up. It's kind of nice. Like it's early, but yeah, the days are getting longer, which is great. But yeah, we just, you just kind of go all day, which it's fine for a season for sure. But, wintertime, we all hibernate because it's dark at like 5 p.m. and, stays dark till 8 a.m. So yes, breaking out into a new season. In South Carolina, we call it the swamp season because it is sticky and hot and just blazing sun every day. But I'm here for the heat. I'm not a winter girl. So I
understand. I'm from Southern California, so I'm definitely a summer months and warm weather girl as well. So even though I'm not there quite as much these days because I'm traveling a lot, but when I am.
So great. Well, Serena, it's just been so lovely having you, and love hearing your perspective and really like where you've been. Your story, like I said, is just unbelievable. But I think that it's birthed a lot of what you're doing right now, which is having a lot of impact on people's lives. And so I hope if you're listening, you just really were able to connect with some part of our conversation, that it encouraged you, hopefully gave you some things that you could put in your tool belt that you can use for later. We'll link up everything that you need to know about Serena, all the places you can find her. Like I said, you got to look at her social media. She's got an incredible IG platform where she shares a lot of information. Like I said, even some of the ones specific to nutrients and foods, you do a great job at teaching about them. So if you're somebody that wants to learn more about benefits of amino acids or benefits of certain herbs and foods, she has a great page where you can find a lot of free resources to kind of just dive a little bit deeper onto that. So Serena, any final thoughts as we wrap up here today? Anything you want to leave our listeners with, or a resource or anything? I want to make sure we don't miss anything in this conversation.
No, this has been amazing, and I thank you so much for your time. You're fantastic, and it was such a treat to get a chance to share with you my story, and just everything that we're doing. So I appreciate you very much.
You as well. Well, you're beautiful. And I'm excited to see where you go, because you're doing great things. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. It was such a joy to have you. And, if you like our episodes, share them with a friend, do all the things like, hit us up on Instagram, whatever. We love hearing from you. We love testimonials and feedback. So we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for joining us today.